Hi students, I welcome you all to E-Padashala. I am Dr. P. A. Rajeshwari, working as Assistant Professor in the Department of Food Science and Nutrition, Avinashalingam University for Home Science and Higher Education for Women, Coimbatore. Today we are going to discuss about the module Questionnaire and Schedule method. And questionnaire and schedule are considered as the heart of a survey work. Hence, they should be carefully constructed and the method used to collect standardized data from large numbers of people. They are used to collect data in a statistical form. If it is not properly constructed, the survey will become difficult. A questionnaire is a research instrument consisting of a series of questions on other prompts for gathering information from respondents. Although they are often designed for statistical analysis of the responses, this is not always the case. Let us now move on to the meaning of questionnaire. A questionnaire is a form prepared and distributed to secure responses to certain questions. It is a device for securing answers to the questions by using a form which the respondent fills by himself. It is a systematic compilation of questions and organized series of questions that are to be sent to the population samples. It is an important instrument in normative survey research, being used to gather information from the widely scattered sources. The questionnaire procedure normally comes into use when one cannot readily see personally all the people from whom the research desires responses, or where there is no particular reason to see them personally. The purpose of questionnaire is twofold, that is, to collect information from the respondents who are scattered in a vast area and to achieve success in collecting reliable and dependable data. Coming to the forms, we have different forms of questionnaire. Now we shall see the different forms of questionnaire one by one. Structured versus non-structured. The structured questions contain definite, concrete and direct questions, whereas non-structured questions may consist of partially complete or incomplete statements. A non-structured questionnaire is often used as the interview guide, which is non-directive. The interviewer possesses only a blueprint of the enquiries and he is largely free to arrange the form or statements of the questions. The enquiries framed in a general form beforehand or given a specific form during the actual process of interview. Closed form versus open form. The questions that call for short check responses are known as restricted or closed form type. They provide for making a yes or no answer, a short response, or checking an item out of a list of the given responses. It restricts the choice of response for the respondent. He has simply to select a response out of supplied responses and has not to frame his response in his own way. It is easy to fill out, takes less time, keeps the respondent on the subject, is relatively more objective, more acceptable and convenient to the respondent, and is fairly easy to tabulate and analyze. The open form, open-end, unrestricted type questionnaire calls for a free response in the respondent's own words. The respondent frames and supplies his own response. No clues are provided. It probably provides for greater depth of response. The subject reveals his mind, gives his frame of reference and possibility the reason for his responses. The mixed questionnaire. The mixed questionnaire consists of both closed and open-ended questions. For social research, this method is very useful. Many questionnaires include both open and closed type items. Each type has its specific merits and limitations, and the research worker has to decide which type is more likely to supply the information required by the researcher. Fact and opinion questionnaire. Questionnaire are also classified as questionnaire of fact, which requires certain information of facts from the respondent without any reference to his opinion or attitude about them, and the questionnaire of opinion and attitude, in which the informant's opinion, attitude or preference regarding some phenomena is sought. Pictorial questionnaire. In the pictorial questionnaire, pictures are used to promote interest in answering questions. It is used extensively in studies of social attitudes and prejudice in children or illiterate persons. In a pictorial questionnaire, the selected alternative answers in the form of questionnaires are given, and the respondent is required to tick the picture concerned. This questionnaire may be very useful for collecting data in a developing country like India, especially from the rural masses who are mostly illiterate and less knowledgeable. The serious limitation of this questionnaire is that it is lengthy in form, and also it is highly expensive. In the questionnaire technique, greater reliance is placed on the respondent's verbal report for data, on the stimuli or the experiences to which he is exposed, and for the knowledge of his behavior. The questionnaire is effective only when the respondent is able or willing to express his reactions clearly. A good questionnaire can elicit cooperation of the respondent to get frank answers on almost any subject, even such personal matters as sex and income. Thus, it is clear that the respondent can judge the study only by what he can see. The questionnaire, by its very nature, is an impersonal technique, and it is several pieces of paper, appeals, persuades the respondent that he ought to participate. Let us now see about the rules for constructing a questionnaire, which includes clearly worded items, short questions, only one idea concept per question, avoid negatively worded items, avoid technical questions, and avoid lengthy questions. Let us now see about the formulation of questions and its format. If the types of measurements to be made are clearly known, then the researcher can formulate necessary questions relating to each measurement. While formulating a question, its content should be such that each respondent grasps the intention of the question very clearly, so originally thought by the researcher. This will minimize the distortion of the research focus. In addition, the format of each question in relation to that of the overall questionnaire should be decided. The following factors are to be considered before drafting the questionnaire. Number 1. Covering letter. The person conducting the survey should introduce himself to the respondents through a covering letter. In this letter, one can state the objectives of his study along with a formal request to fill up the questionnaire. Number 2. Number of questions. As far as possible, the number of questions should be limited. There should be no repetition of questions. The response from the respondents will be poor if the number of questions are too many. Hence, care must be taken to minimize the number of questions. Number 3. Sequence of questions. The questions should be arranged in a logical order. The sequential arrangement of questions makes it easy for the respondents to make a spontaneous reply. Example, it is irrelevant to ask the number of children before asking whether the respondent is married or not. Number 4. Ambiguity of questions. The questions should be unambiguous, that is, questions should give only one meaning. There should be only one answer to a question. The question should focus only on one point. Number 5. Questions should be short and simple. The questions should not be lengthy. They must be short and easily understandable by the respondent. As far as possible, technical terms should be avoided. Number 4. Personal questions. As far as possible, questions of personal and pecuniary nature should not be asked. Example, questions about income, sales tax paid, and the likes may not be answered by the respondents in writing. If this information is essential, it must be obtained by personal interview method. Therefore, these questions are to be avoided unless otherwise the study actually requires it. Instructions to the informants. The questionnaire should provide necessary instructions to the informants. For example, it should specify the time within which it should be sent back and the addresses to which it should be sent. Instructions necessary to fill up the questions can also be given in the questionnaire. Number 8. Types of answer. As far as possible, the answers for the questions should be objective type, that is, yes or no type questions are most welcome. However, when the alternative is not clear cut, the yes or no questions should be avoided. Number 9. Questions requiring calculations. Questions requiring calculations of ratios, percentages, and totals should not be asked, as it may take much time and the respondents may feel recurrent. Number 10. Attraction. A questionnaire should be made to look as attractive as possible. The printing and paper used should be neat and qualitative. Enough space should be left for answering the questions. Next comes the questionnaire designing process, which includes 10 steps. Let us see the steps one by one. Step 1. Determine survey objectives, resources, and constraints. Step 2. Determine the data collection method. Step 3. Determine the question response format. Step 4. Decide on the question wording. Step 5. Establish questionnaire flow and layout. Step 6. Evaluate the questionnaire. Step 7. Obtain approval of all relevant parties. Step 8. Pre-test and revise. Step 9. Prepare a final copy. Step 10. Implement the survey. Now we shall see about the types of questionnaire. Questionnaire is broadly divided into two categories, that is, self-administered questionnaire and interviewer-administered questionnaire. Under the category of self-administered questionnaire, it is further divided into three types, that is, internet and intranet mediated questionnaire, then postal questionnaire, and then you have the delivery and collection questionnaire. Under the broad category of interview-administered questionnaire, it is divided into telephone questionnaire and structure interviewer questionnaire. Let us now see about the mode of administration. Self-administered questionnaire, in which the respondent fills the questionnaire by himself or herself. And coming to the schedule, the investigator or the researcher reads out the questions and records the respondents' answers. Now let us have a look at the advantages of questionnaire. The responses are gathered in a standardized way so that questionnaires are more objective, certainly more than interview. Generally, it is relatively quick to collect information using a questionnaire. However, in some situations, they can take a long time not only to design but also to apply and analyze. Potential information can be collected from a large group of population. This potential is not often realized as the returns from questionnaire are usually low. Potentially, information can be collected from a large portion of a group. This potential is not often realized as returns from questionnaire are usually low. However, return rates can be dramatically improved if the questionnaire is delivered and responds to it in a class time. Let us now move on to the disadvantages of questionnaire. Questionnaires, like many evaluation methods, occur after the event, so participants may forget important issues. Questionnaires are standardized so that it is not possible to explain any points in the questions that participants might misinterpret. This could be partially solved by piloting the questions on a small group of students or at least friends and colleagues. It is advisable to do this anyway. Open-ended questions can generate large amounts of data that can take a long time to process and analyze. One way of limiting this would be to limit the space available to students so their responses are concise, or to sample the students and survey only a portion of them. Respondents may answer superficially, especially if the questionnaire takes a long time to complete. The common mistake of asking too many questions should be avoided. Students may not be willing to answer the questions. They might not wish to reveal the information, or they might think that they will not benefit from responding, perhaps even be penalized by giving their real opinion. Student should be told why the information is being collected and how the results will be beneficial. They should be asked to reply honestly and told that if their response is negative, this is just as useful as a more positive opinion. If possible, the questioner should be anonymous. Let us now move on to the second part of our module, that is schedule. The schedule is nothing more than a list of questions which it seems necessary to test the hypothesis. A schedule is a structure of set of questions on a given topic which are asked by an interviewer is investigated personally. Schedule is the most important tool. It is similar to a questionnaire. It is administered by the researcher in person and it is filled up by the researcher. As the schedule is presented in person, it need not be attractive. The technique of preparing a questionnaire are also applied to framing an interview schedule. Definition of schedule. Schedule is also a set of questions which is filled by the investigator who is made responsible to collect information. The investigator approach to the respondent and record the responses of the respondent. In some cases, respondent is encouraged to record the answers to the questions with the help of the investigator. The success of this method is based on selection and training of investigator to collect information. Investigator must have competency for cross-examination. If necessary, investigator's personal qualities like honest, hard work will improve the quality of the work. This system is very useful for extensive inquiries. It is very expensive till normally adapted by state and large organizations. Census survey is also conducted by this method. The schedule is presented by the interviewer. The questions are asked and the answers are noted by him. The list of questions is a more formal document and it need not be attractive. The schedule can be used in a very narrow sphere of social research. Let us now move on to the purpose of schedule. The purpose of schedule are threefold. To provide a standardized tool for observation or interview in order to attain objectivity. To act as memory trigger. That is, the schedule keeps the memory of the interviewer or observer refreshed and keeps him reminded of the different aspects that are to be particularly observed. To facilitate the work of tabulation and analysis. Moving on to the types of schedule, the types of schedule is classified as follows. Rating schedule. In the field of business guidance, psychological research and social research, the rating schedules are used to assess the attitudes, opinions, preferences, inhibitions and other like elements. As evident from the term rating, in these schedules, the value and trend of the above mentioned qualities is measured. Document schedule. The schedule of this type are used to obtain data regarding written evidence and case histories. In these schedules, those terms are included which occur frequently in documents and are to be generally found in case histories. Institutional surveys. Institutional survey forms or evaluational schedules. The use of these schedules, as is evident from the name, is made to gather data about specialized institutions or agencies. The form and the size of evaluational schedules is determined by the nature and the complexity of the problems of an institution. More complex the problem, bigger the size of the schedule. Observational schedules. In these schedules, observer records the activities and responses of an individual or a group under specific conditions. The observation schedules may need one or more research worker to be completed. The main purpose of an observation schedule is to verify some information. Interview schedules. A fifth form of schedule is sometimes treated independently and other times considered included in the previous type. In an interview schedule, an interviewer presents the questions of the schedule to the interviewers and record their response on blank spaces. Now let us move on to the steps in framing a schedule. There are several steps which should be concentrated while framing a schedule. To start with, study the different aspects of the problem. The problem under study should first of all be split up into various aspects. The determination of these aspects will depend upon clear understanding of the problem under survey. Subdivide the problem to get necessary information. Each aspect has gained to be broken up into a number of subparts. These subparts should be quite exhaustive to give a full and complete picture of the aspect under study. The framing of actual questions. Care should be taken to see that the questions convey the exact sense or easily followed by the response, and they will be willing to supply information without any hesitation, bias or distortion of facts. Serialization of questions. In order to obtain well organized information, it is necessary that the question should be presented to the respondents in a well ordered serial. It has been experienced in various field studies that the change in the order of question affects the answers adversely. Testing the validity of schedule. Whatever may be the degree of precaution taken, some slips are bound to be left out and cannot be located unless the schedule has been put into operation. It is very important to know that how do schedules work. A rather expensive method, as enumerators do not come cheap or research scholars expenses often run high. Schedules are filled by the enumerators or researchers who can also interpret the questions if necessary. Needless to say, the identity of the respondents is known. Information collection is both assured and punctual. Questionnaires and schedules are flexible in what they can measure, although they have. Let us now move on to few aspects relating to scheduling tool. A tool which supports the scheduling method, identifying components names, providing components definition, contains components relationship, and is used to generate the project specific schedule model, which are all the highlights of scheduling tool. As we all know, each and every aspect in life has advantages and disadvantages. Now let us move on to the advantages of schedule. Economical. Since the questionnaire approach makes it possible to cover at the same time a larger number of people spread over a large territory, it is more economical in terms of money, time and energy. Other methods do not afford such a facility. Time saving. Besides saving money, the mailed schedule also saves time. Simultaneously, hundreds of persons are approached through it, whereas if they are to be interviewed, it may take a very long time. Suitable in special type of response. The information about certain problems can be best obtained through questionnaire method. For example, the research about sexual habits, marital relationship, dreams, etc. can be easily obtained by keeping the name of the respondents anonymous. Ensures anonymity. As the respondents are not required to indicate their names on the questionnaire, they feel free to express their views and opinions. Anonymity is a meaningful characteristic of questionnaire method. In view of its anonymity, the questionnaire is more effective than an interview. Less pressure on the respondents. The method places less pressure on the subject for immediate response and gives more time to the respondents for properly answering questions. Uniformity from one measurement situation to another is provided by virtue of its standardized wordings of questions, standardized sequence of questions, and fixed or standardized instructions for recording responses. Moving on to the disadvantages of schedule. Illiterate and less educated. One of the major limitations of the schedule is that it can be administered only on subjects with a considerable amount of education. Complex questionnaire requiring elaborate written replies can be used indeed on a very small percentage of population. Proportion of returns is very low. In a mailed questionnaire, the proportion of returns is very low and it may sometimes be as low as 10%. Misinterprets and intelligible reply. In a questionnaire, in a schedule, if the respondent misinterprets a question and writes his reply unintelligibly, there is very little that can be done to correct this. In this approach, there is no facility for repeating questions, explaining them, or seeking clarification of a particular response. It is very important to know about the difference between schedule and questionnaire. Schedule is filled by the investigator, whereas the questionnaire is filled by the respondent. Schedule is more expensive and questionnaire is less expensive. There is no low non-response is seen in schedule, whereas high non-response is observed in questionnaire. Schedule, identify the respondent is known. In schedule, identity of respondent is known. Identity of respondent is not clear in questionnaire. Process is fast as the information collected and filled by the investigator. Process is slow as respondent do not return questionnaire immediately. In schedule, information is collected from illiterate respondent also. It is useful only where respondent is cooperative and literate. Coverage is restricted to visit of investigator. Wide coverage of investigation is possible. More accurate information can be collected. Risk of collecting wrong information is also possible. Success related to honesty and competence of the investigator. Success of this method lies on the honesty and competence of investigator. Success of questionnaire relates to quality of questionnaire. Physical appearance will not affect the response. Good physical appearance will have better response. Information can be collected from illiterate also. Questionnaire can be used only when respondent is educated and cooperative. Sample area should not be wider. Sample area should not be wider. Wider distribution of sample is possible. Relatively more complete and correct information are obtained. Incomplete and wrong information. Here you can see the format of a questionnaire. Let me summarize by stating that questionnaire and schedule are the most important tool in the process of data collection. It is administered by the researcher in person and is filled up by the researcher. As the schedule is presented in person, it need not be attractive. The techniques of preparing questionnaire are also applied to framing an interview schedule. Hence, usually the researchers are advised to refer to the questionnaire for more details and concentrate in preparing questionnaire and schedule. In this module, we have discussed about the types and the advantages and disadvantages of interview schedule and questionnaire. Thank you.